just introduce myself, Ethel Velez, resident leader, Johnson Housing, District Management. I'll pass it on to Mr. Green.
Hi, how is everybody?
Okay.
Okay.
What is your no, wait. Before we start, just tell them where you're from, your name, where you're from.
Oh, you don't know where I'm from? You should by now.
Well, listen.
My name is Nathaniel Green. I'm the TA president for Diamond Houses. I am the vice chair for Manhattan North Council of Presidents. Okay. Anybody else is on it?
Beverly's down there. Yes.
She introduced herself already?
She's Beverly.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm here.
You went on mute. You're on mute, Beverly.
Sorry. Resident Council President for Senator Robert A. Taft Houses, East Harlem.
Okay. And our engineers?
Stu Reed here, Streaming University.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mr. Dougie, Streaming University.
Okay. All right. Okay. Mr. Green, go ahead.
Welcome, everybody. I appreciate everybody coming out this evening for this short little presentation. But I would like to direct the question is, what is your stand on your position on the blueprint? How do you feel about the blueprint regarding the resident?
I'm going to answer that question. I promise I will. I first want to just say thank you. I want to thank you to Ethel Velez over at Johnson Houses, Nathaniel Green, Dykeman, Bellevue McFarlane at Taft, for just having me and for being open to a dialogue. I'm Council Member Ben Kallos, and I'm running for borough president because it feels like the elected officials that we've had and the real estate developers think the only way they're going to get money or make money is by forcing all of us out of the city so that they can just bring in wealthier and wealthier people who can somehow afford to stay here. And I'm sick and tired of getting pushed out. I'm sick and tired of people trying to privatize and push tenants out. But that's why I'm running. I think we can fix it. I grew up here with a single mom. We shared a 1-bedroom. And when I went to public school, I was on reduced lunch and I got made fun of and teased so hard that I didn't eat. And when I got to the council and kids told me it was still happening, and changed the law and made lunch free for every single kid. I want to make sure that we offer every single kid universal after school. I want to couple that with feeding every kid dinner. And I want to couple both of those things with universal youth jobs. We got 70,000 SYEP slots this year. And I carry legislation with Congress members Richie Torres and Jamani Williams to guarantee every single child a youth job. Now people running for mayor are talking about it like it was their idea. It wasn't even my idea. It was Richie and Jamani, but I'm carrying that football in the council. And as a lifelong tenant, I've been tired of real estate developers getting whatever they want from the elected officials who take their money. I never have, I never will. When they wanted to take away a playground in my district from public housing and put up a luxury tower for wealthy people, I backed my tenants and we fought. Gail Brewer joined me. And I'll tell you, one of the things that got me the most upset is while we were fighting, my 2 elected official colleagues in this race were selling out their own NYCHAs, and they were even taking money from the real estate developers who were doing the infill. And I just don't trust that. In my district, we've been investing in our NYCHA. Every single development in my district has layered access, the key fobs on the front doors, working front doors. Every single development has cameras in the stairwells and the entrance and the elevators. Every single development has lighting on the outside, and you don't have that that lighting that they have with the gas that spews out smoke that gives everyone makes it hard to breathe. And we, just like I said to Mr. Green, just if the elevators or things aren't working, everyone has my mobile, they let me know, and we're on it with NYCHA. When it comes to the blueprint, I have to thank Ethel because she is one of the people who really drew my attention most to it. And I think what is most concerning for me is they're trying to move public housing further and further away from the public, and it doesn't provide the funding, and they're trying to put it into a nonprofit. And if NYCHA isn't accountable now to the government, how would it be accountable to, how would a nonprofit be accountable to anyone? So I've had very serious concerns about it. I don't think it's protected tenants. And it's just, for me, it's always going to be up to what does the TA leader want for their development, whether it's President Velez or President Green or President McFarlane, and working with them to make sure that NYCHA hears their voice every step of the way.
So you're saying to us that you'll stand by us 100%?
I will stand by you 100%. I always have. I always will. You can ask Andrea Coleman and Lakeisha Taylor, who both endorsed me for borough president. When they fought that infill, I was there with them, no matter whether the mayor threatened me, whether 32BJ threatened me, whether real estate developers threatened me. Not one of the decisions I've ever made in my life that I regret.
Anyone else want to ask him any questions?
There's one more question there. Beverly, you want to ask that question? I think number 4 or number 3.
Well, I don't have the,
Okay, the question is,
Okay.
we have a question here about where he stands with public housing. Section 9.
And I think he just answered that. So
I didn't get too far into the Section 8 and Section 9 piece, and I would actually really like to. So I kept hearing blueprint, and President Velez really said you need to sit down and read the whole thing. And I sat down, went through the whole 300 pages, and they're not going out of their way to explain things to residents in a way that anyone can understand. I have a law degree and I'm still having trouble understanding it. But as far as I can understand, NYCHA needs about $40 billion to $68 billion. And what's happening is the federal government says, we'll give you the money for NYCHA, or at least give you some of it. What they're saying is that they'll only give it as Section 8 instead of Section 9. And to me, that's, I have a new kid, so I'm not going to use the term of art that's appropriate, which would be, yes, I'm going to say baloney, because my wife won't hit me. And so it's baloney. If now the reason the federal government wants to do Section 8 is because real estate money flows everywhere, whether it's a city council, borough president races, even to Congress. And so Section 8 is a subsidy that goes to a private landlord and goes to private real estate developers. And I don't know why we can't just take that money that they're offering on the table that they give to a nonprofit or a real estate developer and just invest it in NYCHA like they should. So I think that Section 9 versus Section 8 is wrong. And I think that if the federal government's going to give money, we should just give it straight to residents without giving real estate developers profit off the top, while people in NYCHA still live in conditions that aren't appropriate.
Right. So you know that NYCHA has been lobbying ever since Ross got here for Section 8. So that has been something that's been going on. And that's been the push for the money to be put in Section 8. So we're dealing with that because that's
right.
what they've been.
They should be lobbying. There is something wrong when the person in charge of public housing isn't lobbying for money to go to public housing, but they're lobbying for money to go to real estate developers so you can force NYCHA into privatization. That's wrong. I would even say he's violating a duty and breaking certain laws. When you run a company, you have a fiduciary duty. And he's literally just saying, how can I bankrupt NYCHA fastest? And the fastest way is to ask the federal government to defund NYCHA and to put the money into the hands of private developers. We need to fully fund NYCHA, Section 9, and not try to funnel it into private developers through Section 8. It's the same tax dollars. It is your tax dollars.
Right. So the next would be, what steps would you take to turn around how the authority operates?
For me, it starts with the tenant leadership. It starts with leadership like you, Ethel Velez, Nathaniel Green, Beverly McFarlane, and making sure that not only do you have a seat at the table, but that you have a seat at my table. And I have to say, between you and other NYCHA leaders, some of you should have law degrees, because I've had NYCHA TA leaders quoting the US Code to me. I've had folks quoting the Code of Federal Regulations to me and showing me all the ways NYCHA isn't following any of the laws. Along those lines, in my district, working with Lakeisha Taylor and Sandria Coleman, we actually hired lawyers for them when they were doing the infill, because they were violating the federal law. And part of the reason we were able to block the infill, that the residents weren't being listened to, they didn't have a seat at the table, was because they had failed to follow the federal rules that require tenants to have a seat at the table. So one, you have to have a seat at the table. Two, I'd like to make sure that we open up the ticketing system, and that we're using, I'm a software developer, and Doug and I have talked about this a little bit, but it's not that hard to tell when repairs aren't being made. And the reason you can tell is, and I worked my way through law school working at a help desk, helping people fix computers at University of Buffalo Law School, where I paid my way through. And if you have a ticket that gets closed and then reopened immediately, then you know that the person who closed the ticket never bothered showing up. If you have a ticket that got closed 3 times or more, then you know that you got an employee who you need to work with. And we need to better monitor our public housing employees to make sure that the repairs are actually happening. We need to make sure that repairs are getting addressed immediately. I was at, give me 1 second. I was at Drew Hamilton Houses with Wayne Breamfield, who actually also endorsed me. And when I was there, he was surprised because he was used to elected officials who come and go. And when I got there, I stayed, I talked to everyone on the line. Then I was like, okay, Wayne, it's cool if I go knock doors. So I did. And when I went in the lobby, there was literally water pouring out of the ceiling. And I went and I got Wayne, and he's like, you know, Ben, even if elected officials do stay, they always just walk past all the problems. I was like, Wayne, this is an active leak. Like, they need to go fix it. So I took a video of it. I sent it to NYCHA, and they ignored it. And Wayne was like, yeah, this is how it is. Like, they've been ignoring it for weeks and months. So then I said to Wayne, I don't know if I can fix this, but what I'd like is, would you stand next to me at a press conference? We're going to have umbrellas. We're going to stand under the umbrellas under the leak. We're going to call on NYCHA to fix the leaks in your buildings. And I called City Hall. I called Mayor de Blasio to invite him to my press conference, told him to wear a good raincoat. And what do you know? We were about to call Monica Morales at Pix 11 when Wayne calls and says the leak's been fixed. And so that shouldn't be my play, but it's too often my play, and it's been working. So whether it's overhauling the ticketing system, whether it's actually investing in it with capital dollars to make sure every single development has the layered access and cameras and whatever lighting and whatever improvements you need, to lobbying for Section 9 at DC and talking to Carolyn Maloney, who's endorsed me, and making sure we fully fund NYCHA, you better believe I'll be there for you on every single step of the way.
Okay. So residents are the best consultants, we think, and we know. Will you meet with them after the elections, and would you form a task force for public housing leaders?
Yes, yes, and yes. The best predictor of what somebody will do when they're in a higher office is what they already do. There isn't any other elected official that I know that goes to NYCHA TA meetings like I do, and I've been going to them. I do something crazy that no other elected official does. It's called First Friday, where I welcome people into my office the first Friday of every month to talk about whatever they want. Sandria Coleman takes advantage of it, and she is there every single month, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And I actually appointed her to Community Board 8. And I might be asking a lot of the TA leaders to help find leaders, and whether it's them themselves who feel the calling or residents on their executive boards, I'd like to see you represented on the community boards, and every single community board should have a public housing committee, quite honestly. And along the same lines, the first time I met with President Ethel Velez, you mentioned that it would be a good idea to have a TA, and I've actually added it to my platform. You can find it at Kallos.NYC /NYCHA. And I would want to meet with the NYCHA TA leaders regularly. We would have a dedicated staff member meeting with folks monthly, and I would do my best to be there and be there in person. And we'd be working through the problems, through the open tickets. We'd be making sure NYCHA was at the table. And if NYCHA works for the mayor, I don't care who the next mayor is, but they better have a representative at the table for City Hall and NYCHA. And we're going to work through and make sure that you have a dedicated staff person. You have access to me. All of you are going to have, whoever is a NYCHA TA leader is going to have my mobile number, and we're going to work together to get things fixed. But absolutely to the task force, absolutely to the round table, and absolutely to continue to have an open office no matter what.
Okay, thank you. Beverly, do you have any questions on the blueprint part?
Yes, I do have, on the blueprint part. I don't know, once you are elected, how much you can do in terms of forensic audits, or how can you help, in terms of forensic audits with NYCHA, because I believe that they have been mismanagement for years. Now that they have not done preventive maintenance on our homes, now they leaving us up to this guy, Gregory West, to abolish Section 9 and give his family, Tillman and Tish, which is his father-in-law company, our apartments, our homes. So I don't know what is your stance on, if once you get elected, what is your position in terms of looking in forensic audits, because this guy is clearly in violation of the 964 100.25 HUD regulations. He's in violations because at the point of conception, we have never had a point of, have never been at the table at the point of conception. He has always imposed his views, and then we implement them.
As I said before, we need to rely on our NYCHA TA leaders. Many of you should have law degrees. Beverly McFarlane just dropped some knowledge, literally quoted the Code of Federal Regulations citation to the paragraph. And I've learned something new. I'm not afraid of anyone, whether it's going to be another Mayor de Blasio type mayor who I went after on Rivington, or whether it's anybody else. And with regard to the current person, if they are not following the federal law, Beverly, I don't have to wait to become borough president. I'm going to try to rewatch what you just said. I'd be interested in connecting with you afterwards, but I'd be interested in sending a complaint to the, I'm going to say it and you're going to be grumpy with me, but the first thing I'd like to do is send it to the New York City Department of Investigations NYCHA unit, which I know doesn't do a good job, but it's the first step. And then I'd like to bring it to the attention of Congressmember Carol Maloney and federal authorities so that HUD can do the type of regulation they're supposed to make sure that NYCHA isn't self-dealing and that the head of NYCHA isn't in a place where his family is going to personally profit. That's everything wrong with government. It's why I'm running for office and running against the real estate industry, because the real estate industry shouldn't be taking over public housing. We shouldn't be appointing somebody who's related to the real estate industry there. I'll be honest, I'm running against folks who, the two other elected officials are knee deep in real estate. And I'm upset about it. And I can't imagine how upset you are to discover what your leadership is doing in their relationships. It's sickening. I'd like to report it with you. I would do it. I would like to do it now and not wait till I'm borough president. I will follow up with you once I am borough president, but let's start now.
Well, I would definitely appreciate that because, you know, unfortunately, it's like falling on deaf ears because Mr. Russ have went from state to state to state. He, Cambridge, Atlanta, Georgia. I mean, he at Minneapolis. This gentleman have went to state demolishing public housing, low income housing, and transferring and displacing families. So we want to get this hitman out of the seat. But unfortunately, I read that even within the new mayor, if the new mayor is elected, he's still some kind of way, the way they've written his contract, that they will not be able to fire this man. So I don't know how true is that, but
Beverly, I don't know anyone who has I don't know anyone who has a perfect contract that can't be fired. We fired Donald Trump and he didn't want to go easy. There is when you want to fire somebody where there's a will, there's a way, and whoever the next mayor is can do so. I just have to tell you that in my election right now, I've been very lucky. About a dozen NYCHA tenant leaders have been supporting me and endorsing me in their individual capacities, not as TA leaders. They've been taking big risks. I know they've been getting all sorts of different threats, but I'm going to have their back. But if NYCHA elects me, I'm going to be the NYCHA borough president. And we're going to be spending the next 4 years building the base of power at NYCHA, getting everyone registered, mobilizing every single building, getting TAs elected everywhere. And I want to get into a place, there's 500,000 people living in NYCHA at least. And if we can get everyone registered and voting as a block, 400,000 people picks the next mayor. We could pick a mayor who's going to be the NYCHA mayor. Hell, we could elect a public housing resident mayor.
yeah, but unfortunately, he have moved most of these developments into RAD impact. So it's a large percentage of NYCHA have already been privatized. So unfortunately, by the time we elect a new mayor, that at the end of the year, I don't know how much damage he would have done.
So with that, I want to say, yes, with this new mayor coming in because of the monitor and all of the things that went in court, it's could take 3 people to get rid of this mayor. Not like how it always have been that the mayor gets to choose our person. So they can't choose our person no more, the way they've set it up. But he can be eliminated, but he doesn't plan on staying anyway, because he's already said that. One of the things that a lot of residents are talking about and they're concerned about, a lot of people have been sold to this RAD program and this PAC program. One of the things that we're not sure of is, do the residents have to take the program? Because they're being sold a bill of goods that it's the best thing on earth for them to do. And it really isn't on one level. And people are finding out now because they're not able to pass the credit checks, and people are being put in their right size apartments, and a lot of things are happening to the folks who are in the RAD program now. So I think what I would like to happen in Manhattan, especially, but probably in other boroughs, but in Manhattan, I would like for someone to come and educate the residents about what RAD actually is and what are their options in the RAD program. Because it seems that they come and tell the residents all of the wonderful things that's going to happen once they get part of the RAD. And now we're hearing from other people who are in the RAD that there are problems. So before they go any further, we need to start to educate residents, because they're not being educated, really. They're being bamboozled on what they are going to do, not the kind of decisions they can make about their own properties. So that's a big concern. And as we talk about options, folks want to, and I think you have some in your district who are going into resident management. And people want to know more about resident management and what would that mean to residents once they once they learn about it, and can they stop this other process?
When it comes to RAD, in our experience, we've been able to block it. There have been some proposals for RAD Pack in my district where we've been able to block it. One of the things that happened at Isaacs and Holmes is in 2014, when I first got elected, Holmes and Isaacs had a score of 86%. It was one of the best run buildings in the system, and they didn't need repairs. Things were taken care of. And then when the mayor decided that this was a site for NYCHA infill, things started getting worse. You can ask my tenants. And then the Department of Justice brought a lawsuit about the conditions. And one of two things is true. Either A, they lied and the building really wasn't ever an 86%, which I don't know. But I think what has more likely happened is when it was an 86%, they immediately started ignoring it so that they could force the tenants to take whatever was being offered. And I think that's a lot of what's happening with RAD Pack. And I think that NYCHA is willfully wasting money. They're pouring it into consultants instead of into residents. And I think that in the situation where there is a TA leader and their residents have decided that's what they want to do, and some people are pretty far along in RAD Pack. I've spoken to those TA leaders who are going door to door, and the big ask they've had is we agreed to it, but now it's been years and years and years, and we're still not getting the repairs they promised. And I've said to them, I'm an attorney, I will represent you, I'll hire them if I need to, but we're going to make sure that they deliver on their promise. And for those who it hasn't happened yet, I want to be there to work with folks to make sure that the only consent that is possible is when it's informed. And so the residents have to know everything, understand their options. And at least for my part, I just as well sue NYCHA and make them make the repairs like we're doing in my district.
Are there any more questions on the RAD or the blueprint about that? So also, yes, we definitely want to do and quoting codes, 42 US Code 143-7R, public housing resident management, really is something that we need to look into, because NYCHA has to have one that really oversee what they're doing, because they are, the word is not corrupt, but maybe they fib a little bit. And at the end, we're being shortchanged.
You're 100% correct. And I'm going to go look up that code after this and learn more. There isn't a meeting that I have where I don't learn more. And I think it's important to have elected officials who are able to learn and admit when they're learning. And part of what I was talking about with the resident before is the TA leadership should be in a position where they have access to the ticketing system. And they can see what tickets are being opened, what's getting done where. I've also talked to folks. I think Doug and I were talking about it. I think Doug was there when we were talking a little bit about some of what they're doing at Grant, where I've been talking to some TA leaders, and some of them have been fairly sophisticated, where when they know a gas riser needs to be replaced, I've had TA presidents who are keeping their own tracking system of what NYCHA has, so that when they go to a person's house, they sit there, they get the ticket in, then they add it to their system. So when you need a new gas riser, they're going from the top of the building to the bottom of the building on the H line and getting everyone to put in the same ticket so that NYCHA actually has to do it. And then when the tickets get closed randomly, he has them reopen it. That's Carlton Davis who taught me about that trick. I hope I haven't blown it up. And you probably all already knew about it, but like, you should have access to the ticketing system. You should have access to being able to hold your manager accountable to what's happening. I have to be honest here about this. You're paying rent, and in any other rental building, any other co-op or condo in the city, you better believe tenants are able to hold management accountable whether or not they do their jobs.
All right. Okay, so you know how we all feel about the blueprint, the RAD, this whole process that's going on. There are, once you become our borough president, there are a few other things that really need to be improved. Our community centers and how they operate, DYCD. We have community-based organizations that are in some of our centers. What happens is they take total control of the community centers and total control of what programs need to be in the community centers. And I'm not saying that all of the providers are bad, but I think there needs to be meeting in the road. And if you're coming into a community, the community also needs to be part of the process of what you're providing for the community. And things like that are not happening. I mean, I can tell you some stories that go on with DYCD and some community centers that are terrible. But here is another system that the community become voiceless. There's places that we need community centers. I mean, it's just if you're looking at the whole picture and if you're looking at every development being a little town unto itself, then you have to provide all of the services for the community, not the services for your own needs. There's two different things. You can't bring in all of your friends, bring in all of your family members and not provide programming that's suitable for the area that you're in. Every area is not the same, even though we all live in public housing. We don't have the same needs. We don't have the same ideas. And you need to be flexible enough. I don't understand how a provider can do an RFP, write up all the programming that's needed without coming to the community and asking the community what they think the needs are. And we shouldn't have to fight for them to hire community people. That shouldn't be a fight. It shouldn't be a fight that our kids should be involved in some of the programming that they would like to see happen at the community. That's not a fight. That's something that should happen organically. It should just happen. They should want to talk to the young people in the community. They should want to talk to the leadership in the community so that we could build it up together. We still have a lot of problems with our young people. I mean, all this gang stuff that's going on, all this shooting, all of this stuff. Why aren't the community centers providing better programming or things that the young people are interested in? Why do you can go in some of these community centers and they're still empty? Why?
And can I just piggyback off of that also?
Yes, please.
I believe that it should be a prerequisite if these community-based organizations are coming in there, that they have to work with the resident leadership in that development, if that is its case in point. And it should be 50% of, at least 60% of our children and staff should be in those developments. So it should be, they should be a prerequisite.
I agree 100% with everything you just said. In my district, we have Isaac's Neighborhood Center, and we work very closely with their executive director to make sure that anytime the tenants want to meet there, they have full reign. When we were having hearings to fight the infill, we actually hosted them there. When this mayor proposed infill at the site, the mayor proposed bringing a different provider on site that was going to let the residents go to the new building that was being built on their land. They were going to set aside 10 or 20% of the seats for them. And that was part of one of the reasons we killed the project, because residents, very rightfully so, said, why would you build something on our land that isn't for us, where the only time we can use it is as a token? We got to have a seat. We got to get a percentage of it, not even 3/5, but like just you get 10% of the seats or 20%. So 100%, I fought this before, I'd fight it again. I also say that the next borough president and the council members need to do better. I put $2.5 million into my NYCHA senior and youth centers. I've gotten computers for them, internet for them, scholarships for them, new kitchen. And so we really need to invest in these centers. I was over at Lincoln Houses, and they really don't have a senior center, not one that folks would go to, and yet they have empty storefronts across the street. And I'm just wondering, and when I spoke to them, they were like, well, we have a NYCHA office that we use for the TA that we've converted into a makeshift senior center. I'm just like, why isn't DFTA and the borough president renovating one of the storefronts and turning that into a senior center? Why aren't we building them out for each of the developments? I have Lexington and Washington. I believe Washington has a senior center, but the Lexington tenants don't. And each NYCHA development quite often is larger than most towns outside of New York City. And so they need to have their own services. One of the reasons that I've had some fights with Maya Wiley and Mayor de Blasio. One of the things I want to require as part of the franchise agreement for Time Warner Cable and Verizon, I wrote about this with Eric Adams, is that they would have to give every single NYCHA tenant free internet. And I want to put, for every NYCHA development, they should have a computer center. And the people who work at the computing center should be young people from the NYCHA, and even folks who might be older who want to learn computers, have a skill and be able to have a marketable skill, work at the computing center in NYCHA for a year or two, get the job experience so that they can go make high 5 figures, low 6 figures doing computers. That's part of what my path was. I love computers, and you can make a lot doing it. So everything you said is yes. And I'll tell you, I've gone up against some of the providers and said that you're not doing what you're supposed to. You should be doing more for the NYCHA residents. They've listened, and absolutely TA leaders should have a seat on the board of the nonprofits that are ostensibly running programs for them. And one other piece that I heard a little bit from Beverly McFarlane is just where it's appropriate, we should try to make sure that one nonprofit isn't the one gobbling things up. And if we can bring in your chosen violence interrupter, that can be a big deal. And absolutely 100%, I have heard complaint after complaint from our youth center provider who says Friday Night Lights, whatever you want to call it, DYCD is giving them funding, and they pay for one person $15 an hour to keep the site open for 6 hours, but they don't fund programming. And so the reason that these places are empty at night is because there's nothing going on. And whether it's buying a PS5 for the kids to play, I was a video game kid, we can buy them for the centers for the youth kids to play at night, or ping pong tables because I'm that nerdy, or even pool tables. We could have a pool hall downstairs, and everyone of all ages could be there, and could really activate these senior centers and youth centers after hours as a place that people can be, especially as we come out of this pandemic, so folks can be a community again.
Yeah, well,
I have one thing to say. I'm here in Taft, and we have not a community space. We don't have a basketball court, and most of the 2 parks that we have is deplorable. So tell me what you can do for me.
Sure. What we did at what we would be doing is renovating your parks. One of the things that was most insulting about what they did at Isaacs and Holmes is no sooner did we renovate the playground did they want to tear them down. And it was just one of those things where it's like, but we just built that. Why are you trying to do that? Are there specific spaces at Taft that you think would be great places, or is it the existing playgrounds? What would you like to see there?
Well, a community center. We don't have I've been here 25 years, and there's no community centers. And just like you said, we have existing commercial spaces that I have been fighting to try to get built out for. I mean, we have organizations that is willing to do programming, but we need build out. I have worked with other council people that has allocated over $200,000 for build out, but NYCHA is still dragging their feet and telling me giving me the run around and saying it's not enough or whatever, but we have
You definitely have room to even have a
Room.
sense of built.
Yes, we have plenty of space, and we have commercial space that haven't been utilized over 25 years.
So where they have the silk screening and embroidery storefront would be, how long has that been vacant?
That been over 20 years.
And then
Wow.
the space right next to it, how long has that been vacant?
That's been more than probably 25 years.
So they let it sit there vacant instead of bringing in a tenant. That's wrong. And so they should, at the very least, open it up so we can use it. And what about the space next to Oriental Palace? How long has that been vacant?
Well, that's where my office is now. I fought for that
Good.
over 3 years ago when I became elected. So they had to, I came and brought in the community board, Robert Rodriguez's office. I brought in Gail Brewer's, and they finally gave me that space because I was able to, I have 89 people on my resident board now. So they had to give me that space.
And what's going on with the Cook School and Institute?
Well, the Cook School are just working very closely with me. I have a very good relationship with the Carmen, which is the liaison, and also the owner, and they are allowing me to utilize when they said, I guess right now they cannot have anyone from outside, but they have opened up their doors to me if I need it for meetings or if I'm hosting an event. So,
Well,
and
who's
also
in the
they
Cook
gave,
School? Who's in the Cook School after hours, and why can't it be seniors and folks from the NYCHA since it's built on your land?
because that's a private property. That's a private entity, even though it is built on NYCHA land. It was the church that was private. It was a private entity. It's not a really NYCHA land.
Okay,
Right.
you'll fill me in
NYCHA
on it,
built
but I might want to ask them for more.
Well, I have asked them. Was able to solidify 10% of the seating, the tuition seating, and also 10% of the employment opportunities. So they have been giving me doing like job fairs for my residents to work in there. So that's what's happening with them. They really normally play nice in the playground. I'm not really having
Okay.
issues with them.
Good. I will just as an aside, what do you call them? Blanking on me, but we've had situations with schools that were going up where we were able to like really, Marymount wanted to put up a 300-foot tower across the street from Lexington Houses that was going to leave it in shadow, and they were charging their kids $60,000 a year. And I said, how are you going to build a school on 99th Street for people paying $60,000 a year, more than people in East Harlem make, and not open up the schools to kids in East Harlem? And so we fought them at CB 11, and we brought the height down to 210 feet, which is about the same height as Lexington. And we got them to agree to do scholarships. And now my TA president's granddaughter is going there. And we have a pathway for folks. So Beverly, if you've got folks from Taft Houses that are interested in going to Marymount, please let me know, and I'll see if I can get special dispensation for it to be more than just Lexington Houses.
Well, I thank you for that. If you can give me literature or correspondence with that, I will put that on my Facebook page.
But that's I guess that's the kind of bargains you need elected officials to be fighting. They need to not be there with their hand out trying to get money for them. They need to be getting, we need to get $60,000 scholarships for the kids.
Well, this school is about $60,000 worth of scholarship. I got 10% of, because we was on the construction board from day one. Me and my second vice president was vice chair and vice chair of the construction committee from day one. So
Amazing.
We were definitely, we was serious about them playing nice in the playground. They've been doing good.
Okay, so let me say, this has been an hour almost that we've been talking. Much longer than I wanted to talk with you, but that's okay. The only last thing that I have is that community policing is something that needs to come back. Our developments are greatly underserved, and they should not only be around when there's crime, and the CBOs, which they call them right now. There's just a problem with policing in our community. There's a lot of mixed messages that's going on between the police and with NYCHA, and there's a lot of things that need to be cleaned up. So I'm grateful to hear when you become the borough president that you would be able to meet with us and we could get really into depth of all of the things that we've talked about today, because it's not as clear cut as we talked about just now, but there are issues around the topics that we were talking about. So,
Absolutely.
I
When it comes to the policing, in one part of my district at Isaacson Homes, because of Mrs. Bergen, that's what I'm supposed to call her. That's what she likes for me to call her.
Bergen with an
They don't
I.
have the PS.
Bergen with an I.
Yeah. We don't have the PSA. We have the 19th, and they do verticals every night religiously. When we did have a brief drug problem, the head of the 19th sat me down, said he was the person to call at One Police Plaza to get the narcotics division to come in. And then we brought in narcotics division for a couple of weeks. We got the folks out who were dealing, and things got back to normal. In East Harlem, where I have Lexington houses, we have PSA 5. And in different buildings that I've been knocking throughout Manhattan, I've never seen police officers. I haven't seen anyone doing verticals at night. And ultimately, I would want to work with each TA present to find out if they want to work with the PSA or the local precinct. And I'll tell you, I represent Roosevelt Island. And in my entire time in the city council, I've only had one shooting between my district and East Harlem, Upper East Side, East Midtown. It actually happened on Roosevelt Island. And when it did happen, I asked the 114th precinct, which patrols, what we could do. And I ended up providing them, I give them $1,000 a year to pay for a van to bring kids back and forth from the 114th and police to the Roosevelt Island for a Police Explorers program, so that we can actually create mentorship relationships with folks instead of an antithetical relationship. And so I think that that's the kind of relationship we want. And folks have been talking about having police officers who actually live in the neighborhoods they patrol. And yeah, I'm hoping that would change things.
I think we tried that. That didn't go over too well. And so they had to leave that program alone because people were fearing for their families. There was some repercussion back in the day when they was focusing on having the officers living in the community. They also was giving them an incentive by giving them an extra bedroom, if they would. Yeah, so we've gone down that route.
You have different rules now. You have different rules with PSA, with the PSA and the precinct. There are different rules.
Yes.
So what PSA could do is best for the way I look at it, for housing to be on the PSA rather than be under the precinct, because the precinct only will not follow all the NYCHA's rules. They'll tell you that they can't follow all the NYCHA's rules. And
yet we're supposed to be one precinct. Everybody's supposed to be under one police force. That's why they were getting the 125 million for a while.
So Nathaniel, I hear you. And as I said, I've got different TA leaders who have different relationships with different precincts and PSAs. And so I will be following your lead and do what I'm. Elected officials come and go. It is folks like you three who have been there in time out and time again. And God willing, I will be your borough president for 8 years and we'll be able to get things to another level, but you'll still be there leading and you'll still be there living there. And hopefully it'll be better than when I started.
Okay. So would you like to have any last closing words?
You have my vote?
Just,
Not who you? No, Mr. Green, not you.
Yeah, my vote. He's good.
Go go ahead,
Thank
Ben.
you. Thank you all for having me. Thank you for giving me this platform and giving me access. We
Okay,
can change things. Real estate doesn't have to own this city. They don't have to be able to give money to politicians and buy them. Never taken their money. I never will. We have an election. It's already started. The voting is on June 22nd. As borough president, I will be coming in day one and trying to allocate capital to make sure everyone has a front door that works, making sure folks have cameras to keep them safe, making sure they have lighting. We also have a laundry list of other things to do, like firing the current NYCHA head, advocating in Washington, building tenant power within NYCHA. And what I really want to do is be a borough president for public housing. I've made a nuisance of myself to many of you. Many of you have been hearing from me again and again. You can reach me at 212-960-3440. You can learn more about my platform at Kallos.NYC/NYCHA. And I'm going to keep showing up. I always do. And if you're curious about any of the stuff we've been doing, you can go to benkallos.com on my government side. You can see where we put all of our money. You'll see the investment in NYCHA. And you can see the First Fridays on Facebook, where you can see me talking to my NYCHA leaders. That's just access that you should have because elected officials work for you. So love to be your borough president. Please rank me #1. And let's fix NYCHA and let's treat tenants well for the money that they're paying in rent and make sure that everyone has a safe home and a home where things work and where the elevators work. Thank you.
thank you so very much for your time. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay,
You
I
got
want
it.
to thank everybody. Thank you, our production team. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Okay, then.
Still have an elevator.
Oh, listen. Okay.